Thank you, Mr. Waseem, Budumedi FM, Harambe, SciTech, DMG events, and all who've managed to take their time to join us today. My name is Godfrey Tai, one of the director at Meeting Entrepreneurship Network. And I'm not going alone, I'm going with Andrew Donaldson. He's one of us at Meeting Entrepreneurship Network and also HBX. So Andrew, thank you very much, and over to you.
Okay, perfect. I guess, Mr. Carrim, let's hand over to you. Let's talk. We want to talk about the role of NYDA post-COVID-19 and possibly even during COVID-19, because we're still there, right?
Yeah. All right, thanks so much, guys, and good afternoon to everybody who's watching. Wow, Mr. Carrim feels so formal for a Friday afternoon. But yeah, no, I mean, let's just have a nice Friday afternoon conversation here. So, I mean, I think, you know, let's reflect a little bit on what South Africa's young people faced even before COVID-19, right? And I mean, it's not wrong to say that we were in a crisis, particularly when it comes to youth unemployment, even before COVID-19. We had the highest youth unemployment rate in the world. Yeah, and I think to a large extent it has to be acknowledged that is a shame on our democracy. You know, that you have all of these young people who are willing and able to work, but they basically denied the opportunity of work because there's just not enough opportunities in the labor market for them to take, or they may not have the right skills, or due to socioeconomic factors, they may have fallen out of the system, yeah, or the pathway that would kind of create social mobility for young people, yeah. And I mean, even before COVID-19, if we look at what young people say to us, yeah, the majority of young people want to work. Yeah, this issue that South African youth are entitled, and it largely goes against the grain of what is true, because young people want to work. 80% of young people just want to be able to find a job and be able to start their life. And not having employment, it robs people of a lot of things. First of all, it takes away their dignity, for one. It gives them no social mobility, so there's no security associated with life. You can't plan to get married, or you can't plan to have a child because you're trapped in the cycle of poverty and unemployment. Yeah? And it largely makes young people disempowered. They don't have the ability to control their own future. Yeah, so they're very reliant on other people for income or support, and that creates. It's not the kind of society we want to have in South Africa. Yeah, so the NYDA's role is sometimes misunderstood in society. Often young people see us as a be-all and end-all of their challenges, and that we can resolve all of those challenges. We're largely a very small organization in the context of government, you know. So just to give you an example, our role would be similar to a Commission for Gender Equality or a Human Rights Commission. We're mainly a lobby and advocacy agency for young people, but we do implement projects, and we are available in provinces and in local municipalities to access some of those services, although those services are not available at scale. So let's take us, for example, and compare us to a National Student Financial Aid Scheme. NSFAS, for example, can achieve close to 80% or 90% coverage of young people who can't access university finance because of household income. We don't enjoy that kind of same liberty because their budget would typically run into the tens of billions of rands, whereas we're largely smaller. We're about a 400 million rand agency. Yeah? And if you divide that up between the 8 million young people who we consider to be not in employment, education, or training, we spend maximum of about 50 rand per young person. Now, acknowledging all of these factors, and since President Ramaphosa took office 2 years ago, the presidency has made youth unemployment one of the most key goals that it would like to eliminate over the next few years. And if we look at the State of the Nation 2020, the bulk of the speech was dedicated towards youth unemployment. Yeah. And the president announced what was called the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. And it's largely made up of 5 pillars, right? For one, it designs a national pathway management system. It's a system where young people can be enrolled, they can use to learn, to build their profile, they can access opportunities which are available to them. And it's a singular system that government can use to kind of communicate and link with young people. Yeah? That underpins everything that youth development practitioners will want to do over the next few years. Secondly, it contains an agile workforce development program. So this is an acknowledgement that at times we become a little bit obsessed with qualifications. Yeah? And the truth is that having a higher education or having a qualification in South Africa gives you a much better chance at having a job or having an income. Yeah? But it's not always the case that you need a qualification to be able to flourish in the labor market. So for example, sectors were identified. So for example, global business services being one of them. Yeah? South Africa is only second behind India in terms of call center development, data processing centers. And those are jobs that don't necessarily need a tertiary qualification. More so, they pay good salaries. Yeah? And it doesn't take that long to train a young person. It doesn't take that long to train a young person for a job in a global business services environment. So the second part of the strategy was to have an agile workforce development program. The third was to say many young people want to be entrepreneurs. Yeah? And it is important to create self-employment opportunities for young people. But there's also an acknowledgement that South Africa's environment is not well structured towards small businesses. Whereas you look at the rest of the world, you generally have a split of about 50% big business and 50% small business. In South Africa, the market is very much skewed towards big business. We have 60 to 70% big business in South Africa and only about 30% small business. So there's macro environmental factors that need to change to enable better self-employment, to ensure that young people who are starting enterprises are able to flourish over the long term. Yeah? And those are things like getting Wi-Fi connectivity into rural areas, into townships. Yeah? Creating a flow of money within townships so that it's not, doesn't enter townships and then leave in the big corporates here. That it is actually spent in township and village economies. Yeah? And to kick off the self-employment opportunities, we launched a really exciting campaign as part of NYDA to fund 1,000 businesses in 100 days. Yeah? Between State of the Nation and June 16th, which everyone will know is Youth Day in South Africa. Unfortunately, COVID came in the middle of those plans, but given the fact that we're now back at level 3, we've restarted the campaign. We've still got 200 spots left for businesses. We just advertised. It was on Thursday. So, I mean, if you're interested in being an entrepreneur and accessing funding, you can check out our website. It's www.nyda.gov.za. And we do funding through grants. So we really target micro enterprises. Those startups that wouldn't ordinarily get funding elsewhere. The NYDA is kind of trying to be the beacon of hope for those kind of micro enterprises. The fourth thing is to say, there's lots of young South Africans who have gone out and done their qualifications, right? So they've got TVET qualifications, but they can't qualify because they don't have space to do their experimental learning. We have approximately 500,000 young people who are just waiting for an opportunity to do experimental learning. So the strategy is, can government not come in and create space to pay these young people a stipend so that they can work in an environment where they can do their learning, they can qualify, and then they're pretty flexible to be available in the labor market because they've done their learning, they've got their qualification. The last part of the strategy is about saying, okay, we're not going to completely eradicate the youth unemployment crisis in 5 years. Yeah? there is structural and systematic things that need to change. So for example, South Africa's economy needs to grow fast. Yeah. Secondly, we know that our education improve to produce better quality skills that are more relevant to the labor market. But I think you will agree with me to say that there isn't really a shortage of work in South Africa. And I'll clarify that statement just now, is to say, is there not an opportunity for young people to do work for the common good, yeah? That meaningfully benefits their community, but in doing that work, they are equally able to learn a skill and earn a wage in doing so. And if you think about something like a public education system, right? So I mean, schools have really been in the spotlight the last few weeks because of COVID. But if we think about the public school environment, we've got 26,000 public schools. Yeah? And I'm sure many young people will know that the role that after-school sports, arts, drama programs plays in cognitive development of young people. Now, in our public education system, those after-school programs have largely gone away, or if they've still there, they're not very functional, yeah? Or they're largely driven by civil society, so it exists in some communities, but not in others. If we were to take 40 young people per public school, yeah, and train them to be after-school sports coaches, run drama classes, young people working for young people, we could immediately take 1 million young people out of unemployment and use their talent and use their energy and use their skill for the public good. Yeah? And I think that as we move towards a post-COVID environment and how we think and how we value work, we must think about something that looks like a right to work for our young people. That means in South Africa, if you're a young person and you're willing to work and you're able to work and you have the energy, should you have to be stuck at the liberty of the labor market here? Should you have to continuously send out your CV 80 or 100 or 200 times to be rejected over and over? Or does the responsibility largely fall on the state to say that we will guarantee every young person a right to work in society, because work gives people dignity, gives them social dignity, gives them mobility. Yeah? So that is how the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention was structured. Yeah? And I think although COVID has forced us to change some of our plans, it has not changed the commitment to put South Africa's young people to work. Yeah? And the nice thing about the Youth Employment Intervention is that it brings many actors together, right? So it brings organizations like the NYDA, like Harambee, like the Youth Employment Service. So we leverage off each other's strengths, and that young people are given a consistent message, yeah, so that they're not left continuously confused and continuously excluded from opportunities which can meaningfully change their life. Yeah? So you'll be hearing a lot of exciting developments, and I mean, I'd love to come back in 3 months and tell you about the progress that we've made on the Youth Employment Intervention. I also think that, you know, during COVID, the NYDA realized that a lot of youth micro enterprises were finding it difficult. Yeah. So I think we saw a lot of activity towards small business. Everybody knew that when the hard lockdown happened, that would affect small businesses disproportionately, because they don't have the reserves built up to be able to kind of respond to impact of something like COVID. Yeah. So, and then when we looked at all of the funds that were announced, there was really good work done by both the private sector and government through the Department of Small Business Development. But we kind of felt like we had these micro enterprises, you know, youth-led ones, which kind of fall through the cracks, yeah, because they don't seem to qualify for any of the other funds. So we set up something called the Youth Enterprise Micro Relief Fund. And as I've said, our model always focuses on grants. So we gave 10,000 Rand once-off grant to youth businesses which may have been distressed by COVID. We've been able to distribute about 8.4 million rand in funding, supporting about close to 900 enterprises. And I think we've been able to save quite a few number of jobs through that initiative. Always, the number of applications will always exceed what you're able to approve. I do think South Africa does have a physical problem in that we just don't have enough money to be able to sustain everything that is going on, you know. And I think you're seeing that play out in the way that taxis are being allowed to load to full capacity now. So I mean, we did what we could under the circumstances. We tried fundraising as much as possible. We're lucky in that the KwaZulu-Natal and the Mpumalanga provincial government came on board to support us. So that was an opportunity for us. Yeah. So I think, you know, as we reflect on the future, I very much believe in the concept of work, and I suppose you'll hear that come through in the things that I say. You know, I've heard in the last few days a lot of conversations around a universal basic income, yeah, which is basically, so right now we've said that we're providing this 350 rand grant to everybody who doesn't have an additional source of income, yeah, and who falls outside the normal social grant process. Now, there's a lot of talk about the fact that that may become a permanent grant of sorts, yeah. I tend to navigate more towards an employment guarantee rather than a universal basic income. Like I said, the feedback we get from young people is that they want to work, yeah. And I think a money drop has certain benefits, but I think giving a person an opportunity to do work where they can build networks, where they can build social capital for themselves, is a better opportunity for us to do right by our young people. If we look at support for entrepreneurs, I think that organizations like the NYDA must continue to try and scale their initiatives. I mean, part of the reason why the 1,000 Businesses in 100 Days campaign was launched was because one of the things we said to the presidency was, if you have all of these young people who want to start businesses, the NYDA gets about 8,000 applications for funding a year, of which we're able to fund about 1,000, you know. So you have all of these young people who want to be entrepreneurs, but they're unable to access finance anywhere else, you know. So access to finance is a big part of the puzzle. I do think that we need better working relations with the financial services industry. I think it's very rare that a young person or any person can walk into a bank and get startup capital for their venture. You know, it just doesn't exist in South African society. We're very risk averse in our financial services industry. And I think we need to have a conversation about how we de-risk microfinance for financial services institutions. Even if you look at the loan guarantee scheme, I think only 10% of what was allocated has actually been dispersed. So I think in some cases, it's a case of people don't have faith in the system. They're simply unwilling to walk into a bank because they know they'll be rejected. But I also think that banks can do better outreach and can probably change their systems of risk governance a little bit, with government acting as a backstop to try and protect any losses that may occur. As I've said, I think the access to market issue is a big one to crack. I think South Africa is very much, both from a public procurement and from a private procurement perspective, we're very much skewed towards giving opportunities towards big business rather than small business. Yeah, and I think there's a huge opportunity because the framework already exists. Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity on the broad-based economic scorecard. Yeah, because you have supplier development programs as one of the targets to be achieved on the BBBEE scorecard. But often we find that companies, rather than procurement, they'll be spending that on training, or they'll be spending it on outreach activities. Or so I think there's a better way to leverage I mean, I had an interesting stat to say 70% of private procurement is controlled by the JSE Top 40, you know. And I think there's an important discussion to be had to say, how do you distribute your private procurement more fairly so that you benefit more small enterprises, not a certain amount that may just be within your circle as an organization? Yeah. So I think the access to market is a huge issue that we need to crack if we're really going to create this kind of conducive environment for young people. The last thing that I'd like to say is that the one thing we hear from young people over and over again, and this has been through the lockdown and before the lockdown, is data is too expensive in South Africa. Yeah? Young people want to learn. Yeah? Many of them buy smaller data bundles, even though it works out more expensive in the long run, because they don't have enough income to be able to purchase data on an ongoing basis. Many young people log on to sites after midnight when data is cheaper. When we change sites towards being kind of Mobi free, we see how usage improves during the day. So if South Africa talks about an infrastructure program, that infrastructure program has to result in us providing free, if not free, really low-cost data to rural, vulnerable, marginalized communities, because that alone is going to unlock so much growth for us as a country. Yeah? We're literally denying people access to information, which can help them to improve their lives. Yeah. So I mean, the release of spectrum is one step in the right direction, but we really have to. We have some of the highest data costs on the continent and in the world. Yeah. And I don't think that's at all fair to the youth of this country. So I think, I've spoken quite a bit. I hope that it's been beneficial. I did see some questions posted in the chat, but I'll hand over back to the program director, and then I guess we can reflect on some of what I've said. And I'm very happy to hear if you disagree with me, and how young people believe also we can unlock solutions for growth in the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waseem. And thank you very much. I've got a question here, Mr. Waseem. One of the requirements to get this 1,000 business grants in 100 days, one of the requirements is EDT training. One must have undergone the EDT training. So what about those that cannot get access or cannot be able to attend those training that they haven't attended before the lockdown? What about them? Those who have applied for it at their branches and those who have requested NYDA to come and conduct the EDT training at their areas. What about them?
Yeah, thanks very much. So I think that the training, so just to give you a little bit of background into training, right? We've been doing youth entrepreneurship for quite a considerable amount of time. And one of the reasons we introduced training was because we started to note good correlations between young people who attended our intense 5-day training course and their performance in business once they'd undergone that training. Yeah, and that's why we introduced it as kind of a compulsory requirement before you could qualify for our grant funding. With that being said, we also acknowledge that there are certain instances where we don't want to duplicate what may have already been done. So for example, if you're a young person and you've already got a degree and you want to go into business, and during your degree, you did business management, you did accounting, you're pretty much covered by what you've already done in the past, and it's no reason for us to put you through another training program. Yeah. In addition, we also partner up with organizations like NYDA. Yeah. So NYDA, for example, also offers non-financial support in the form of training. So if you've been through a NYDA program already, NYDA won't put you through training again because it's unfair to keep duplicating and keep young people in training and taking them away from their business activities. So that's one solution, is that if you've already can prove to us you've been through a training program, we won't necessarily make you go through training again. Also, we will be restarting training in all of our centers. we've just got to keep it very COVID compliant. That is strict social distancing. So our groups can't be as big as they were before. But we will do our best over the next couple of weeks to those who are interested in applying for the program to make sure that they are trained. And what I'll do is I'll post my email address on the chat. If anyone would like to, inquire about training, or they feel they're not getting a decent response from the centers, they can always just drop me an email and I'll get customer service to work with it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir, on that one. Andrew?
Okay. Firstly, thank you. I'll just call you Waseem. There we go. It's Friday. It's informal. We've got a few comments here from Guy Harris from Cape Town here. And I've had to read through them, but I think it might just be simpler if Guy, if you just spend a minute or two just elaborating or asking the question around the points that you've made. So Guy, if you want to jump in and do that quickly.
Yeah, I've just unmuted myself.
Perfect, we can hear you.
Great. Yeah, the point I'm making is that we're really looking, if we're looking for sustainable employment, it's got to be through scaling medium enterprises rather than the rather spray and pray survivalist micro entrepreneurs, which is mainly job rotating. So if I start another nail salon in Alex, it's just going to put the one down the road out of business. But if I get something that is scalable, that's innovative, that is focused on, particularly on an export market, I know foreign tourism is down, or is focused on household level nutritious food security, I'm going to be able to do something that is scalable. And I mentioned in my chat on the entry-level upskillable jobs, like, for example, a fettler who goes on to be a coded welder. So I think that we should rather, if our objective is poverty alleviation, the current spray and pray is the best way of distributing money. But if our focus is on unemployment reduction sustainably, it's got to be focused more on scaling existing businesses that are already successful and helping them create more jobs. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Guy. Waseem, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful point that has been made. I do think that, sometimes we don't seem to be able to connect with those real entrepreneurs. And let's be honest, is that not everyone is an entrepreneur. There's a certain amount of self-efficacy and resilience to be able to enjoy the journey of being an entrepreneur. Yeah. So I think it's a very relevant point that's being made. I do think, though, that small businesses are more affected by lack of economic growth than big business. Yeah. So if we think about a small business, they can never scale if there's too little disposable income in the economy, right? So we think about a nail technician or a hair salon, right? If it's the same people who are only able to access hair salons or nail bars or whatever, then you're right, you're just taking money away from one to another. So you're not creating any new income, you're not creating new jobs here. But the more the economy grows and the more people who are working who have disposable income, the more that money gets distributed to more small businesses. Yeah, and therefore we also have to address the issue of economic growth. Yeah, as much as we can put public policy interventions to cushion the blow of our structural issues, it's systematically we need things to change. Yeah, like you say, we need to be exporting more goods from South African shores into export markets if we're going to grow the local economy. And I think one opportunity that COVID presents, and I don't think we should always look at it, it's very painful what we're going through, but I've never believed that goods need to be shipped 15,000 miles from Asia to land on these shores, plus pay tariffs and duties, and then still be sold in our market. Surely, if there was ever an opportunity to localize our economy, now is the time to do it. Yeah. So I do think there's numerous opportunities. I mean, we shouldn't be a net food importer, you know. And I think this is really the time where we can think innovatively. You know, we can start providing subsidies to our manufacturing sector so that we move textile manufacturing back onto our shores. So yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of the points that Guy has put forth. I'd really like, you know, guidance on how we can connect with those real entrepreneurs on the ground who are making a difference and who may not know how to access government funding, and how we can better incubate them and better connect them with opportunities.
Thank you, Waseem. I think that's fantastic. I think just from my side, I see quite a lot here, and we've got Teboga. She's on the line as well. She's following you to talk about digital opportunities available. And I think when we talk, and Guy just made a very sort of similar comment here, that coding and animation are COVID friendly potential support. So in 2014, I think it was the Kenyan government that spent, I don't know how much they spent, but they essentially put together a project where they said, we will get 1 million people into work by getting them to work online, and rather than looking at our own market for employment, is actually say there is so much available externally where people with access to data, and you rightly bring up the cost of data, but people with access to data at an affordable cost with technology can essentially be taking away work from anybody sitting anywhere in the world today. And that I think is powerful. It's something really, I think, from a consideration point of view, that does need to be considered. I know we're talking about, or you mentioned certainly the business process outsourcing, and that's a fantastic thing for South Africa to get into or to grow. I think that there's a lot of potential, but especially coming out of COVID-19, people are now much more in recognition of the fact that they can work from home, but they can only do that if the infrastructure is there, which I know you mentioned. So I don't really have a question as such, but I think that there's certainly a lot for the people listening in here to think about as we head into far more of a digital future post COVID-19, what that means for us as individuals. Now we've got just about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to just check if there's any other questions. If you're on Facebook, I think Godfrey is on Facebook. He's watching that. If you want to post a question there. Otherwise, again, on Zoom, we have the chat function up, and you're welcome to put something in there as well. So any last thoughts, I guess, Waseem, from yourself, just in maybe sort of closing before we get a last question in?
Yeah, I see there's a really nice question here about the universal basic income, and that 350 Rand is too low as a UBI. You know? And I mean, it was interesting when the Minister of Social Development mentioned it. International media reported South Africa as the first country to be adopting UBI. I'm not sure if they knew how much the amount was in dollar terms. So look, I mean, I think there's certainly a conversation to be had here. You know, I mean, ever since 1994, we've been talking job creation in this country, right? And the lowest unemployment is even when our economy was growing so fast, the lowest it ever grew to was, or the lowest unemployment ever fell to was 21%. So we've always had this mass unemployment problem, yeah. And I think there's a lot of people who say we're just fighting against the tide, right? Because work is becoming more and more automated, it's becoming more and more skilled in nature, and that we'll never be able to address this crisis. So I do think that as a follow-up conversation, we need to think about how we value work in society, yeah, and how we pay for that work in society. Yeah. But I still do think there's an opportunity. I still dispute the fact that there's a shortage of work in the country. I think there is work to be done. It's how government becomes an enabler of that work. You know, how do you collect taxes on the one hand and use taxes for the common good? I mean, another big conversation is out there is how do you tax higher? How do you collect more taxes so you can do more public programs, you know, improve the quality of life? That, unfortunately, is a conversation you can never have in South Africa because we have so much corruption here. And it's important for young people. I don't think that people would be against paying more tax in South Africa if they believe their taxes were going to good use. Yeah, I think majority of South Africans see the suffering of other people and don't want it to happen. You know, but how are you supposed to be willing to pay more tax if every day there's a new scandal about how money is being abused by the government? Yeah, and that's a big part where young people need to. Young people really need to hold government accountable from local level, and there's a value in young people being organized so that they can hold government accountable for its actions. Otherwise, we have to eliminate the sickness of corruption from our society.
Thank you. I think that's absolutely true. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. I think if we look at some of the other sort of developed nations like the Scandinavians in particular, they tend to have closer leanings to or better social services that are closer to a universal basic income, and they have the highest tax rates in the world, so upwards of 55%. And it creates if it's distributed fairly, it creates a safe and secure environment which we all want to live in. I think that's absolutely key. Okay. So I don't see any questions on Facebook. I see there's one more coming in here from Mandilake, which says, I think the issue there isn't enough of a focus on structural unemployment, meaning there aren't enough skilled people to fill those positions. Rwanda is also tax heavy, but you can see where it goes. Yes, I think that's the same point. I think you were making there. I think there is the tax can be used a lot more effectively than it currently is. In terms of structural unemployment, I'm a big advocate, and Godfrey and I work together on the entrepreneurship networks, much more working with self-employment. I'm a strong believer in self-employment. I think if we look at the digital side of the economy and globally as well, I think there's far more opportunity in a shared economy and being able to distribute and use technology and share the cost of that and bring that down quite considerably as a result of that. And that's quite interesting. But let's leave it there. I think, oh, sorry, one more, very last one. What do you think about digital entrepreneurs as a concept of grooming young people with skills for the digital economy? What do you think about digital entrepreneurs as a concept of grooming young people with skills for the digital economy? So there we go. That's probably the Kenyan example I used there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I understand the question, it would be an entrepreneur who would then probably run online skills development programs to support other young people in honing their skills or developing new skills that they could use in a self-employment or kind of, as you say, in a shared economy, as a hustler to kind of like find jobs or what do you, I forget the name now, gig economy jobs. Mm-hmm. I mean, it definitely, there's opportunities for that. And I mean, I don't think we should ever dispute the innovation of young people. I think the ability to innovate and to learn and to then figure out things for themselves exists, but you've got to create the right structure to do it. You're never going to solve this digital conversation if we remain with the high data cost that we have in South Africa. Yeah, if you solve environmental issues like that, you'll unlock tons of growth for the country. Yeah, and I really do believe in that being able to be one of the solutions for our problem.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Sorry, Godfrey.
We've got comments here on Facebook. They say let me check here. There's a guy that said he went to NYDA offices, they are closed. So is there any alternative that they can use to access the entrepreneurship development training?
Yeah, so So the offices do still remain closed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post the email address where you can just drop us an email. I'm also going to post the call center number so they can give guidance to the young person on how he can access services while we still remain closed. We're still fully functional as an organization. It's just that we think that while we go through the peak, it's safer that we don't do face-to-face interactions. Once we're out of it, we can start working with young people again. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time, Waseem. I think everyone on the call, on Facebook, etc., does appreciate the time. And I just want to make a last point that we will be holding you to your 3-month progress report. I'll get Godfrey to to put that in the diary, and we'll invite you back for that.
Great stuff. Thanks so much, guys.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time. You're welcome to stay for the next session, or you're welcome to drop off as well. It's up to you.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So thank you very much. I think, Godfrey, we've essentially said that we will take a sort of 10-minute break, just to give guys the time to sort of stretch your legs before Tebogo Lefefi does her session, looking at the digital opportunities, which I think is going to be quite an interesting, exciting session, given the fact, or given the conversation that we have just had here. We are looking at how you, as a young person today who is what we call a digital native, someone who's grown up with this technology, how can you use that to actually move forward and actually try join the gig economy, perhaps, or maybe one of the other options that Tebogo might talk through with us. So before we do that, I think, Godfrey, we just want to spend just a few minutes with all of you and just give you a little bit of an insight into who we are, both from a Metseng point of view, but also from an HBX point of view, just in case you were wondering who it was that was inviting you to this, and why we put this together. So I think maybe, Godfrey, do you want to talk a little bit about Metseng just for a few minutes? If anyone wants to just step away and grab a glass of water or something, we won't take too much of your time, but we will give you time to do that.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. Guys, for those who don't know what Metseng is all about, Metseng is an entrepreneurship development organization that tries to develop township-based entrepreneurs and also rural-based entrepreneurs. We work with different institutions, different peoples all over South Africa and Africa as a whole. We do incubation in partnership with HBX. We do mentorship. We do visibility study for businesses. We do different things that include entrepreneurship development. We work with different schools that we encourage young students to join the culture of entrepreneurship network. We do career exhibitions where it's not the normal career exhibition that normally happen. We call people who are practicing after varsity. We call lawyers who are practicing. We call doctors who are practicing. We call veterinarian surgeons who are practicing to come and tell people that even after you went to varsity, you've got the degree, you've got your diploma, you've got what and what, and you've got the skills. You can practice. You cannot just wait, say, I'll wait for work. There's no work. Entrepreneurship contributes a lot of percentage into our GDP, and in the whole world, I think plus or minus 50%, more than 50% of job opportunity comes from small businesses and entrepreneurship sectors. So we have been working with HBX trying to come up with solution that will try to develop entrepreneurship at villages. And we have decided to launch several hubs from the 29th of this month until next year. We are still trying to get as many hubs as we can so that we can have people that they can come to our hub, access our services, access the internet, access the office facility, access mentorship, access coaching, access everything that has to do with entrepreneurship development. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Godfrey. I think that it's actually, I'm probably the most excited that I have been about a business for a long time with setting up HBX. So Godfrey and I have known each other for some time, and through Metseng Entrepreneurship Network, we've worked together on a range of different things. But one of the challenges, and for me, it's relatively simple. I sit in Langebaan here in South Africa on the west coast, which is a beautiful part of the country. It's a part of the country that has got access to fiber internet. It's got access to everything. We've got a mall here. It's a small little town, but we've got just about everything to keep us going. And one of the challenges that I had, and then I realized it's not my challenge, actually, it's Godfrey's challenge, is every time I deal with Godfrey or try to connect with Godfrey, there's different challenges with the mobile signal, the access to data, etc. And so working together, we said there must be a better way. There has to be a better solution for young people who have come back from the big cities or towns, from universities, from the TVET, the education and training colleges, coming back into the rural and township areas, only to be hit by the lack of infrastructure, to be hit by the lack of data, the cost of data, the lack of courier service. I mean, if you try to run a small business, I struggle here in Langebaan to get decent courier service to sort of ship parcels across the country. We send stuff to Godfrey. It takes days, if not weeks, to get there. It takes more effort from Godfrey's side to chase the courier companies to try to get something. I was reading a comment from the founder of the Drip Footwear. He uses a courier company. He says since lockdown began, they've lost 200 pairs of shoes. And now the cost of the shoe is 900 Rand. The shipping cost is probably 100 Rand. That's 200,000 Rand that a small business has literally lost because of courier. Now, with working with Godfrey, we said there's got to be a better way. There's got to be things that a small business needs, whether it's a micro entrepreneur or not, that sits in a place like Madibogo Pan, where Godfrey is based, that we can help with. So we decided to form HBX. We registered it on Youth Day this year. So we're calling it a lockdown startup, because it is something that really came to the fore because of lockdown, where we realized that whilst people working in an office and going home in the city could actually continue to work from home, that wasn't the case for guys in the rural and township areas. And so HBX developed out of that, and we worked on different things, but we're essentially now a business services organization with a focus on the rural and township economy. So as Godfrey mentioned, they're a hub. We're calling them hustle hubs. So if you're a hustler, this is where you want to be. A hustle hub is going to, our first one is going to be based in Atamalang, which is in the northwest province. It's a rural town of about 5,000 people. And that's going to have almost, if you're in the town, it's going to have almost a postnet / incubator hub sort of feel that we're going for. You'll be able to buy a coffee, sit down, use the internet. You'll be able to send a parcel from there. We'll have printing facilities. And Godfrey, through Metseng Entrepreneurship Network, is able to bring in all the skills and stuff to help register businesses, to help young businesses who are starting up look at their branding, look at their logos, etc. So that's sort of some of the things we're thinking about, or actually we've developed to a greater degree. We're hoping to open the first one on the 29th. But then besides that, we're working through my background, which is mostly in financial services, training and digital. We're looking at the technology. So how does technology facilitate that? So how do we get those services available in a small area like that, in Atamalang, to 5,000 people? If we're able to connect those entrepreneurs with a wider audience, so make their products available online, that helps us. It helps us all, because we can connect. We can connect with the courier companies. We can get them to work, get a single space, almost like a postnet. You can get a single space that they can move into. And having that online, I did a stint in e-commerce, so bringing in a lot of the e-commerce platforms that you can use to then move those services online. And so that's HBX at the moment. We're still working through it. We will have membership options and things available. You're welcome to look at the website, hbx.co.za. We are still working on it, so forgive it if it's got a few issues in there. But that's a little bit about HBX and what we're doing. So thank you for the time. Thank you, Waseem, for staying. I see he's still listening, which is fantastic. Great to hear. I think that there's a lot that we can do and work on this as we go forward.